You know, life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? One day, everything feels normal, and the next, you're faced with a reality you never imagined. Losing a spouse is one of those moments that can turn your world upside down. It's a deeply personal experience, and if you're watching this, chances are you've either been through it or you're preparing yourself for the possibility. And let me tell you, you're not alone. Many of us in our later years face this reality, and while it's never easy, there are ways to navigate it with grace and wisdom. Today, we're going to talk about something that's not often discussed but is incredibly important: the costly mistakes you should avoid if your spouse passes away first. These are the kinds of mistakes that can affect your finances, your emotional well-being, and even your relationships with loved ones. But don't worry, this isn't about dwelling on the negative. It's about empowering you with the knowledge to make the best decisions during a difficult time. So, let's dive in. The first mistake to avoid is making major financial decisions too quickly. When you lose a spouse, especially if they were the one who handled the finances, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. You might be tempted to sell the house, give away money to family, or make large purchases as a way to cope with your emotions. But here's the thing: grief can cloud your judgment. What feels like the right decision in the moment might not be the best choice for your long-term financial security. Take your time. There's no rush. Sit down with a trusted financial advisor or a family member who can help you sort through your options. Remember, it's okay to pause and think things through. Now, let's talk about the second mistake: isolating yourself. It's natural to want to retreat from the world when you're grieving. The pain of losing a spouse can make you feel like no one understands what you're going through. But isolating yourself can lead to loneliness, which can take a toll on both your mental and physical health. Reach out to friends, family, or even a support group. You don't have to go through this alone. Sometimes, just having someone to talk to can make all the difference. And if you're not ready to talk, that's okay too. Just being around others, even in silence, can be comforting. The third mistake is neglecting your own health. When you're grieving, it's easy to let self-care fall by the wayside. You might skip meals, forget to take your medications, or stop exercising. But your health is more important now than ever. Grief can be physically exhausting, and if you're not taking care of yourself, it can lead to more serious health issues down the road. Try to establish a routine, even if it's a simple one. Eat regular meals, take your medications, and get some form of exercise, even if it's just a short walk around the block. Your body and mind will thank you for it. Now that we've covered these first three mistakes, let's take a moment to reflect. Losing a spouse is one of the hardest things you'll ever go through, but by avoiding these common pitfalls, you can protect yourself from unnecessary stress and hardship. In the next part, we'll explore two more mistakes that are just as important to avoid. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and there are steps you can take to navigate it with strength and resilience. Let's keep moving forward together. Now that we've talked about the importance of not rushing into financial decisions, avoiding isolation, and taking care of your health, let's move on to the next two mistakes that can have a big impact on your life after losing a spouse. These are things that many people don't think about until it's too late, but with a little awareness, you can steer clear of them and protect yourself during this vulnerable time. The fourth mistake is ignoring or delaying the legal and administrative tasks that come with the loss of a spouse. I know, this is probably the last thing you want to deal with when you're grieving. It's overwhelming to think about wills, probate, updating accounts, and notifying institutions. But here's the reality: these tasks are essential, and putting them off can lead to complications later. For example, if your spouse was the primary account holder on certain bills or assets, you'll need to update that information to avoid disruptions. Start by making a list of what needs to be done, and tackle it one step at a time. If it feels like too much, ask a trusted family member or a professional to help you. You don't have to do it all at once, but taking small steps will make the process more manageable. Another part of this is making sure you understand your financial and legal situation. If your spouse handled most of the finances, you might not even know where to start. That's okay. Gather important documents like wills, insurance policies, bank statements, and tax records. If you're unsure about something, don't hesitate to reach out to an attorney or financial advisor. They can help you make sense of it all and ensure that you're not missing anything important. Remember, this isn't just about paperwork. It's about securing your future and giving yourself peace of mind. Now, let's talk about the fifth mistake: letting guilt or pressure dictate your decisions. This one is a little more personal, but it's just as important. After losing a spouse, you might feel pressure from family, friends, or even yourself to make certain choices. Maybe someone suggests you downsize your home, or a well-meaning relative encourages you to move closer to them. While these suggestions might come from a place of love, they might not be what's best for you. And then there's guilt, feeling like you should have done more, or that you don't deserve to move on. Let me tell you something, your feelings are valid, but they shouldn't control your decisions. Take the time to think about what you want and what will make you happy. It's your life, and you have the right to live it on your terms. For example, let's say your spouse always handled the family finances, and now you're feeling guilty about not knowing how to manage things. Instead of letting that guilt paralyze you, use it as motivation to learn. There's no shame in asking for help or taking a class to better understand budgeting and investments. Or maybe you're feeling pressure to give away your spouse's belongings before you're ready. It's okay to take your time. Grief doesn't follow a timeline, and there's no rule that says you have to let go of things before you're ready. Trust yourself, and don't let anyone rush you. As we wrap up this part of the conversation, I want to remind you that it's okay to feel uncertain. Losing a spouse is a huge life change, and it's natural to feel a little lost. But by avoiding these mistakes, whether it's rushing into decisions, isolating yourself, neglecting your health, ignoring legal tasks, or letting guilt take over, you're giving yourself the best chance to move forward in a way that honors both your spouse and yourself. In the next part, we'll cover the final mistakes to avoid, and I'll share some thoughts on how to find hope and strength during this challenging time. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and every small step you take is a victory. Let's keep going together. We've covered a lot of ground so far, haven't we? From financial decisions to self-care, legal tasks, and the weight of guilt or pressure, these are all things that can shape your life after losing a spouse. But there are still a couple of mistakes that are just as important to avoid, ones that can affect not just your present, but your future as well. So, let's dive into these final points and then wrap up with some thoughts on how to move forward with hope and resilience. The sixth mistake is neglecting to update or create an estate plan. Now, I know this might sound like something you can put off, especially if you already have a will in place. But here's the thing, life changes, and so do your needs. If your spouse was a big part of your estate plan, their passing means it's time to revisit those documents. For example, you might need to update beneficiaries on insurance policies, retirement accounts, or other assets. You might also want to consider creating or revising a will, setting up a trust, or assigning power of attorney. These aren't just legal formalities, they're ways to ensure that your wishes are honored and that your loved ones are taken care of. If you're not sure where to start, an estate planning attorney can guide you through the process. It might feel like a daunting task, but it's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and your family. The seventh and final mistake is forgetting to plan for your own future. When you lose a spouse, it's easy to get stuck in the past or focus solely on the present. But your life is still unfolding, and it's important to think about what comes next. What do you want your days to look like? Are there hobbies you've always wanted to try, places you've dreamed of visiting, or relationships you'd like to deepen? This isn't about moving on from your spouse, it's about honoring their memory by living fully. Start small. Maybe it's joining a book club, volunteering, or taking a class. Or maybe it's simply allowing yourself to dream again. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to look forward. Your future is still yours to shape. Now, as we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. First, let's take a moment to acknowledge how far you've come. Grief is one of the hardest things we face in life, and yet here you are, taking steps to protect yourself and build a meaningful future. That takes courage, and you should be proud of yourself. Second, remember that it's okay to ask for help. Whether it's from a friend, a professional, or even a support group, you don't have to do this alone. And finally, be kind to yourself. Grief doesn't follow a straight path, and there's no right or wrong way to navigate it. Some days will be harder than others, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep going, one step at a time. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. If you've been through this journey or if you're preparing for it, what's one thing that's helped you along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who's going through a similar experience. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for being here, for being open to this conversation, and for taking steps to care for yourself during such a challenging time. Remember, even in the midst of loss, there is hope. There is strength. And there is a future waiting for you, filled with moments of joy, connection, and peace. Here's to living that future, one day at a time. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.